Welcome to the Alex webinar, Embedded URI in MARC, an essential for linked data. This is the third of a six-part series from MARC to BIBFRAME, linked data on the ground. I'm Maria Pincus from the Health Sciences and Human Services Library of the University of Maryland in Baltimore and a member of the Alex Continuing Education Committee. I'll be your host for today's webinar. Our presenter today is Jackie Shieh. Jackie is the Resource Description Coordinator for George Washington University Libraries. She currently chairs the PCC URI in MARC task group. Jackie has offered multiple presentations at national and regional conferences. She previously worked as the original cataloger for electronic resources for the University of Virginia Library and as the team leader for Special Collections and Projects University of Michigan Library. Jackie holds an MSLS from Catholic University of America and an MA from the University of Virginia. There are a few things to keep in mind for today's presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have questions for Jackie, please type them into the question box on your screen, and she'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Our software does not have interactive chat capabilities. You may use the Alex Twitter hashtag on the screen if you wish to comment on today's presentation. The hashtag is ALCTSCE. We do not monitor the Twitter feed, so please use the question box to submit questions and comments. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email with links to the recording and presentation slides. And now, here is Jackie. There will be a slight delay as we change presenters.
Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. Last week, Nancy Lorimer of Stanford University Library laid down excellent foundation for linked data readiness, moving forward toward entitification of library data away from text stream. Notice the two forms of my ORCID ID. Both are uniform resource identifiers. URI is a generic means to identify entities or concepts. The first one is simply a text string, begins with a namespace, followed by a value that identifies me, the person. The one below conveys the same data with a request for action through a user agent, such as Firefox or Chrome browser. The protocol prefix HTTP is a web service application that turns the text stream into a dereferenceable URI. This is the essential for linked data. Today, we see there are countless benefits and challenges for embedding URIs or IRIs in our bibliographic resources. We will examine workflows, tools, and processes and see how they enable us, the cataloging and metadata professionals, to maximize benefits offered by linked data and minimize the challenges as we begin to prepare and move our work from coded text stream to data identification process. The tool which we will use to accomplish this task in bulk or individually is a third-party tool, open source application called MARC Edit. Its linked data tool was designed to perform SPARQL queries, inserting a matched URIs or IRIs in the corresponding MARC field. Several options are also provided regarding the processing endpoints for data queries. We will then conclude the transformation of the enhanced MARC data to BIBFRAME. There are many reasons for us to undertake this endeavor. Linked data is a term used to describe a method of exposing, sharing, and connecting data on the web via dereferenceable URI. It refers to a set of best practices for publishing and connecting structured data on the web. Data are then easier for researchers to interlink and reuse. Though control vocabulary authoritative data are structured per standards when published, most are domain specifics, cater to a particular community of users. So when linking across domains, disparate data sets can be expected. Additionally, there are challenges such as when there are more than one way to structure a body of data. Heterogeneous data sets present more hurdles when connecting points across domains, all of which may impact implementation, deployment, and access. Integration of data relies on sourcing our data. Integrating and alignment of public data sets do not come effortlessly. And this carries over from what Nancy alluded to last week, the identity management and reconciliation efforts. So for today, we will begin with key technical components that support linked data activities on the web, RDF URIs and HTTP protocol. These two together allow and facilitate exploration from known points and creating serendipitous experience for unknown points. MARC data is a fundamental data structure for describing library collection. Working within MARC structure in RDF XML serialization begins to pave the way for transitioning toward a linked data environment. The linked data tool in the MARC Edit suite provides us a mechanism to ensure and enable automatic and manual URI lookup in bulk or individually. URI syntax and formats. For those of us who work with electronic resources, Uniform Resource Identifier is not a stranger. We put the URI in the form of URL in our catalog. The HTTP protocol is a simple yet universal and powerful mechanism for retrieving data. URLs in MARC records have landed us on information resources such as web documents and web pages. Linked data URI, however, takes the activity beyond simple return of a web document. Web service applications is designed to support machine-to-machine interaction, performs content negotiation over networks, accommodate behind-the-scene interoperability. Data can be interlinked, consumed, manipulated over the web, realizing a write-enabled web of data. This shows the distinctive URI components. A URN functions more like a name, like my name, a person's name. With a URL then resembles the person's street address, for instance. So in other words, URN defines the item's identity. URL provides a method for finding it and locating it. URI reference used in RDF XML uniquely identify things. URI ref refers to the RDF triple components. The dereferenceable URI, in this case, can try to generate views of the data from and link to different topics when available API widgets. It will allow users to further explore the retrieved datasets. So here's an example from National Library of Medicine for its subject called a topical subject called antibacterial agents with the identifier D009000. This URI will enable a communication taking place behind the scene to render an HTML page, RDF XML, Turtle, JSON, and extra. Here is a page showing the HTML representation and RDF XML, which is a classic file format for RDF. It will facilitate machine-to-machine legibility. The turtle transformation representation for human consumption. And here is the one, key value pair for human and machine, which is a very popular format for web programmers who have never heard of semantic web and can quickly deploy it immediately. Early on, we have URI/IRI. As well, data get more interconnected over the web. On a global scale, internationalization of URI is inevitable. In this, you will see an example of an IRI corresponding to its ASCII format of a URI. So now that we have determined the type of URI to use, next we need to consider where then it will go in our MARC data. URI has long been defined in MARC subfield U. The URI in subfield U, as most of us familiar with, are URL, Uniform Resource Locator. This links user onto a web document and website. Subfield 0 was defined to contain either an authority control number, a standard number. It was expanded to include HTTP URI. This accommodates the authority data or standard number that have been published in RDF format. This RDF URI describes a resource object but not the object itself. Now currently, there are 49 MARC fields containing subfield 0. Many iOS would accept HTTP URI in subfield 0. At the moment, those of us who wish to insert HTTP URI in MARC can do so manually in this system or process it with MARC edit in bulk. So here we will take advantage of what MARC edit will offer us in terms of processing our data. Okay. MARC edit is a godsend open source application for cataloging function. One of its many features is the ability to perform RDF URI lookup. Currently, their Sparkle endpoint performs query against Library of Congress linked data service. MARC edit can process data in MARC communication format as well as mnemonic ASCII version. The MARC Next Link Data tool sends MARC data query over to an RDF endpoint. When a query was matched, it will generate RDF URI in subfield 0 for the authority data. MARC fields available for lookups are authorized access points, edit entries, and subject headings. For subject headings, the software would take a look at second indicator value to determine the appropriate vocabulary ontology to consult. The content, media, and carrier in 336, 337, 338 are also available as options. From MARC main page, to get to the MARC Next and Link Data service, click on the MARC Next icon. Then you will be presented a series of link data related tools. The one that we are interested in for today is the service that label link identifiers. This is where the URI lookup takes place. From this screen, if you were to place your source file in the bucket here, enter your file name, and enter your output file name, you have list of ID services available on the bottom where you see the dotted line. In this case, if we were to begin our link data lookup, the auto detect main/edit entry option will perform query against Library of Congress ID service, primarily LCNAF, German National Authority file, and the Getty's union list for artist names. And when it's found, you will create a subfield 0 into the MARC field. So in this case, we have an entity that name con, Joe, S. If it's found, a subfield 0 will be embedded from the return. Similarly, for subject headings such as name, topical, geographic, these are all very good candidates for subfield 0. With this option, auto detect subject ID, the link data tool will examine the value found in second indicator position to determine the appropriate vocabulary source to consult. To the left of this arrow, you will see a list of available vocabulary sources in addition to Library of Congress ID service. Look at this subject headings that we have found in a record. The second indicator is where MARC edit were used to determine which vocabulary to consult. Some of the headings may not find an ID in the authority data file. When it's not available, subfield 0 will not be created for that. And you see in the second indicator value, when it's not 0 or 2, MARC edit link data service will then look at subfield 2 value to consult what the URI could be. And you see here, in this particular example, you have fast heading from OCLC and GND from German National Library. If you also desire to have your control vocabulary applied to the content, media, and carrier, currently the consultations taking place via ID.log. And if you do check this value, if you have in your data set 382 for performance medium or performance authors to consult, as well as audience or creator characteristic to consult against demographic group terms in 385 and 386s. This is what you will have in your catalog, and afterwards a subfield 0 for the same value will appear for URI. Now, not everybody would like to use ID.log authority file. Some of us may prefer VF. And if that is the case, you will pick and select the OCLC VF option. And here's the list of the available ontologies that reside in VF. And how would that see? It will be very similar to what we saw earlier on the main and edit entry query. Instead of id.log in subfield 0, you would have VF URI embedded in subfield 0. The next is a very interesting opportunity for us to begin consider. Many of us have questions about the work. What constitutes a work? This is a very big question, and jury is still out. A work, for now, many of us are familiar with, is a work with a high-level description of a resource. Both Ferber and RDA refer to work as a distinctive conceptual creation, artistically and intellectually. Beyond this principle, there are difficulties for consensus to define what is a work. At this time, there is a PCC task group working on defining what is a work entity. And hopefully, we will hear from them soon, later this year, if there is any update concerning defining what is a work. Now, for the purpose of today, for this particular portion, the work entity definition comes out of OCLC's work entity. OCLC's work entity definition originated from its schema.org ontology. Work ID is automatically generated through a series of matching algorithms. It is then published in its work@.org linked data service. When this option was provided, a decision was made to quickly make available to hold this data was to have this data recorded in a 787 field, that is one of the linking fields. Unfortunately, linking fields do not have subfield 0 defined. In order to test the validity of the transformation and URI lookup, it was decided to put the URI in a subfield O. Subfield O was defined as other ID, identifier. So in this case, if you have chosen to have a work ID generated, this work ID from OCLC would have been placed in a 787 field, subfield O. Well, is this a good place for it? We don't know. This is just a temporary measure if you would so desire to have a work ID for your resources. How useful is it? We don't know. Can we trust this work ID as it's being processed automatically? We are not sure. Do you want to use it? It all depends. So there are many questions that you may need to gather enough information for your local use for this field before you wanted to embark embedding a work URI in your MARC data. So if you wanted to see where this actually comes from on work@.org, if you were to do a search, scroll down to the bottom of the page that has linked data tab on it, click on it, and then you will see the work ID link, the work ID URI, that following the schema.org element for example of work. This is where the work ID resides. To refresh for what we just went through, here are all the options available for you to select when you're trying to transform or enhance your MARC data to embed subfield 0 with the RDF URI. Some of us have vernacular scripts in our MARC data. So you ask the question, what happened to those if I have them in my system? MARC will insert subfield 0 in the alternate graphic representation field 880. That will correspond to its associated field linked via subfield 6. So both the Romanized form as well as the vernacular form would all have subfield 0 inserted. In addition to graphic user interface function that we saw earlier, MARC also provides command line option. This is an alternative to integrate MARC tasks with scripts for automation processes. Here are some of the parameters required in order to form queries conducted via the command line. The build links parameter must be coupled with the options to conduct a query. Indexes are available for ontology under the options, including the functional description for each indexes. So if you are in Windows environment, from the Start menu command, you type CMD. Then you could duplicate the SPARQL query experience as is in graphic user interface environment. The command line operation creates an environmental variable pointing to the MARC application directory, calling the program without really needing to navigate to the directory. You could task all the functions with scripts to run without human intervention. This is especially helpful for some of us have series of files to run using MARC to embed URI. Now, proliferation of index services and SPARQL endpoints will increase, and you may come across a need in the near future to provide custom searches using MARC link data tool for batch lookup. So far, we have these default link data services in MARC for link data lookup. These are LC, National Library of Medicine, OCLC VIAF, and of course the German National Library. In January 2016, Terry Rees, creator of the MARC, modified the link data identifier lookup activities. And this tool is now governed by rules, a rules file. The adjustment will give user the flexibility for local customization to interact with link data endpoints. You will simply edit the link data profile XML in the configs folder. You will then locate the rule block, edit appropriate, and move to the collection block. Then edit the content according to what you did with the rules. So this link data profile XML is currently buried several layers down beneath the main folder. The easiest way to locate it is through its main menu. On the Help tab, you will look down to the application shortcuts. From there, you can easily travel down to the config folder and pull up this link data profile XML for edit. Once you are there, link data editing for this particular page, MARC Edit has instructions, specific instructions on what to do next. So here you see have several text elements that define the field for it to look up. You have the type, the particular tag to focus in, the subfields to look up, and the vocabulary source based on the second indicator value, and where to put the URI once it's found, and specific instruction for this particular URI is either subject, name, or mix, etc. For more information, you could go to this link that's showed on the page to show you how you could modify the rules to meet your needs. And after you finish the editing of the field block, the collection blocks is where you would have further editing to do. The collection blocks defines how MARC Edit will interact with a link data service to extract its data. At this time, a link data service must be a SPARQL endpoint that returns well-formed JSON LD, a paired key value for specific URI to be referenced. In the case that you want to know where other endpoints are available for you, the PCC task group on URIs in MARC, which was established in September 2015, this group was charged to identify source vocabularies for PCC-affiliated libraries. Now, this document is currently in draft form, formulating and obtaining URIs, a guide to commonly used vocabulary and reference resource. This was prepared by a subgroup, and this document aims to assist us cataloging and metadata practitioners in the identification effort for our library data. The initial release for this document is expected toward the end of 2017 when the task group concludes its work. The URL at the bottom of the screen is where you will probably find the link to this document when it's completed. So to drive home the point of the URI here is that in this document that I just shared with you will include guidelines determining whether a URI you find is an RDF URI or is a URL that describes the resource. For instance, in this case, you locate a URI that you see on the address bar, in the address bar for this entity called commentary on manifestation. The one that appears on the address bar is different to the one that you see below. The one that down below is actually the canonical dereferenceable URI that you will place in the subfield 0, not the one in the address bar. So then here bears ask the question, how would I be able to know the one that I located is indeed a valid link data URI? Here are some of the validation services that are available to use, and we can test one that whether the URI is an RDF URI. In this example, this is a URI from Library of Congress ID service for Hemingway, Ernest, 1899 to 1960. If you plug in this URI in BBC REST servers, it will tell you what it is. It is a RDF URI or not. The same URI plug in into this service, validation service, paper, report, it also lets you know what kind of form is available from this service. Here's another view from OpenLink Data Explorer, and there are many more if you care to experiment. Each service have provided different layers of annotation of what this URI will contain or contains. And it all depends on your need, how much you need to know regarding this URI. Now that we have all our MARC data enhanced with URI in subfield 0, we wonder how fair it would do with the transformation to BIBFRAME. In this, if you were to have the URI embedded in some of your entity, as you see in this example, some of them there's no URI readily available for this concept or this topical headings. What happens when it runs through BIBFRAME transformation? Currently, there are two. I'm just going to show there are two transformation tools available. One, of course, through MARC-Edit, MARC-Next service. It will take in either MARC XML, RDF, or JSON. There is also available from Library of Congress BIBFRAME website. Once you feed in your data in MARC XML format, the service will return BIBFRAME data in MARC XML, RDF XML, excuse me. So in this view, you will see, compared to earlier in the MARC data, you see the subfield 0 for some headings, and there was no subfield 0 for other headings. The one that have subfield 0 containing URI was readily available. The concept gets transformed, and you will enable the machine-to-machine communication under the hood. Whereas the ones that without URI, the entity remain encoded in text string, and that would not allow automatic query from the machine. So this scenario without a subfield 0 embedded will impede the advancement of web-based service reuse and write-enabled web data. So far, with this, we have looked at RDF URI with HTTP scheme and how well it fares with our data when we need that to transform and move forward toward linked data environment. We also learn how and where the subfield 0 should go. And I trust you would agree that inserting linked data URI in subfield 0 in MARC is the least disruptive way to the system for preparing our data to move forward into a linked data environment. And for us as cataloging and metadata professional, a relatively painless addition to append in our daily routine. We hope that with the IDF URI in place in our MARC record, our data are in a position to take the advantage of the openness and flexibility of linked data, helping our data moving toward a web consumption and manipulation for the benefits for our users. Now, in the case that you are not familiar with MARCedit, you could download the application from the first reference link. Terry Rees has provided a series of MARCedit related activity tutorial. This linked data tool is also available for you to review and refresh what we just gone through. For some reason, if you are not convinced why we are still doing this, and I hope that the article, the importance of identifiers in new web environment and using the uniform resource identifier URI in subfield 0, a small step that is actually a big step, co-written by me and Terry Rees, will help convincing you that it is indeed a good idea. With that, I want to thank you for your undivided attention. And if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for this very illuminating webinar on something that is so important to our profession at this point in time. We do have a few questions here on the queue. One is MARC Next part of MARCedit?
Yes.
What does MARCedit do? And I'm losing these. Let me see. Just a minute. No. Do you remove undifferentiated names from a file that is being run to have the link identifiers added?
Remember that MARCedit consults with authority data. So in this case, if you run your query against id.log, if it doesn't find it in there, when it's not authorized, it will not return a value. Now, if you were to redirect your query to a different vocabulary source, then you will provide, and it found it, it will provide a URI to that vocabulary source.
Should URIs be added to OCLC bibliographic records and or to records in your own catalog? Hello?
Yes. The URI that I described in today's session refers to the object that is described in the field. So if you have a subfield 0 appended in a linking field, 76x to 78x, that provide the subfield W that give you the linking to that bibliographic record for that entity, you do not need a subfield 0 link up to that bibliographic record. The subfield 0 at this time, we are looking at it to be used as a resource object So if you think back into the RDF triple, the subject, predicate, and object, the subfield 0 should always bring back or pointing to the object that is being described in subfield A. In the case I'm thinking about the 76X and 78X, subfield A, subfield T.
Yes, but the question was that I found here was that if that subfield 0 can be added at this point at OCLC records, or it is better not to.
At this time, I think it's probably not a good idea to add subfield 0 to a bibliographic record. Because you have to think in terms of test it to see whether it is a RDF URI. If it's not an RDF URI, you do not want to add into subfield 0. So the services that I mentioned earlier in one of the slides, see if I can go back there. This is where you wanted to test whether your URI is an RDF link data URI. You may be thinking of a URL, not a URI for RDF link data environment. Subfield 0 is to be used for URI that is link data enabled, not URL that links you onto a web page or a record that basically is the end of your destination. That makes sense?
It's hard here to find the follow-up for the question to see if they're happy with what you said, if it makes sense or not. But if I understand correctly, you're saying that it shouldn't be put in the OCLC records for now, but yes,
if you find a URI that is a RDF URI, and this URI corresponding to the object that you intend to bring back, then you can put it in a subfield 0.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
There's a number of questions here. One is, subfield 0 is repeatable, correct? So
Yes.
Should we add a subfield 0 for the person entity and also for the subfield 0 referencing to its term in the RDA vocabulary, i.e. the subject and predicate of a full linked data statement?
You want to add subfield, so can you provide me an example where you want to have multiple subfield 0 added? Which field you have in mind?
Okay, this is Elizabeth Baus. I'll check to see if we get something from Elizabeth Baus. Not yet. I'll look later. All right. Are you inclined to assign fast versus LCSH to ensure you can always obtain differentiable URIs? Are you planning to use, no, that's it, that's the question, sorry. Are you inclined to assign fast versus LCSH to ensure you can always obtain differentiable URI?
This is locally, I hope this is it's just for GW. We are doing both. We don't do one versus the other.
Okay. Thank you. Are you
It's a
planning to...
local practice, local policy.
Are you planning to use the RWO versus authorities URLs that are becoming available through ID.Gov?
Okay. I want to show you the screen. Currently, there isn't a distinction made in how we put the real-world object identifier versus the identifier that provide description to the resource. The task group that I am working with, we have prepared a series of discussion papers to MARC Advisory Committee, MAC, and the screen that you see right now is that we are trying very hard to define different types of subfield that can relate to RDF triple concept. So in this case, we're hoping to set the stage for how libraries could apply the triple components, make use of them in existing MARC environment. So you see subfield 0, we are proposing it to convey an URI that describes the concept, whereas subfield 1 would be the URI that indicate real-world object. And for the predicate, we are hoping that we could have the subfield 4 rescoped to record relationship. And there are many more to come in 2017. Now, for the real-world object, this is an example coming out of BIAF. The first one, if you wanted to look at it, it is actually a URL, but it's a document URI that describes the thing, whereas the thing, which is a real-world object, we would have this field, biaf.org/biaf 751-21530 in subfield 1. If subfield 1 is approved by MAC in 2017.
We still haven't heard from Elizabeth Faust, so the
I
next
can answer
question.
that question afterwards if you know more research is necessary.
Okay. Are there plans to provide subfields for URIs for complex fields such as 300, place of publication, publisher?
I think there will be. At this time, I do not know when that will be.
Okay. Are you inclined to assign... Oh, I already asked you that one. Do you remove undifferentiated names from a file that is being run to have the link identifiers added? I would suppose this be running...
Not for GW.
No. Okay, I would suppose this would be in MARC Next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does LCHS need to be fully enumerated to be a viable linked data vocabulary?
Right now, if LCSH heading, every single component has an ID associated with it, it will return all of them. When it's not, and if you see the earlier, let me, hang on a second, let me go back to the slides. See where it is. So you see this example right here. The first one and the fourth and fifth one do not have subfield 0, do not have an identifier established in LCSH. So there's no URI available for this concept. Geographic. For the first one, Asia, religion, study and teaching, Europe, history and 20th century. There isn't an identifier URI for this field. So then what happened if we wanted to provide URI for different components? That is a big question, and it's being investigated. If we wanted to parse it out for different subfields, MARC records will become very big, and there is a size limit in MARC to accommodate how many bytes of data that you will put in. Now there is also a possibility as you transform from MARC to BIBFRAME, for instance, to query linked data service at that time. Therefore, you could write a program to only query each component at a time. That is also an alternative. But for now, if you are to embed URI, RDF URI in subfield 0, at this time, the URI would only convey the completeness of this concept expressed in this field.
Okay, Jackie, there are more questions for you, but since we are running out of time and we need to conclude, we'll be thankful that you answer these questions offline, and later they will be sent to the participants,
Okay.
the questions and the answers. So I want to say my thank yous now. I want to thank our presenter, Jackie Shieh, and the people who are working in technical support, Mary Aycock, Catherine Bailek, and Megan Doherty from the Alex office. We have many events coming up. As you see, we are in the midst of the BIBFRAME, MARC to BIBFRAME Linked Data on the Ground series. The first were presented on October 12th and 19th. Jackie's presentations on the third is the third in the series, and we have 3 more in November. The next one to be presented on November 2nd is by Carl Stamer and entitled From Here to BIBFRAME. It will provide a high-altitude roadmap for a complete conversion process, as well as a discussion of various tools and methods that will assist with the transition. We end the fall session with webinars on budget transparency and research data management. Alex also offers web courses, which are 4 to 6 weeks long, and forums, which are 2-day email discussions. You'll find more information on the Alex website. We hope you will participate in other Alex continuing education offerings again in the future. This concludes our session. Thank you for joining us.